Burbage, and with me is our president, Ted Williamson. Ted, today we're going to talk about step three, which is find the talent and provide the training. But we're not going to just read from the blog that we posted in articles verbatim, because that would be silly. We're gonna add a lot more to this conversation because finding talent and the dimensions for human resources in New Age accounting is worth a detailed conversation. So, Ted, just to kick stuff off, the article that I wrote, we start talking about assessment, and not only of oneself but the staff that you have at this time. So, when somebody's going to be a new age accountant or wants to strive to that level, what would be the first step when it comes to HR talent?
Well, if you're talking about looking at who you have and what you need, for a new age firm, you really need people that understand technology and they're not stuck in old ways, and they want to be creative. They want to, and they want to advance, and they always want to find new things. So those, I guess, fun people that want, you don't always need that. Sometimes you need grinders, but you need a few people that really want to advance and move forward. So I don't know if that really answered your question, but like a lot of it, I think in the article you're talking about being best in breed yourself, or not, or working with the best in breed technology. That was a step one, right? So working with the best in breed technology is kind of important, and to find people to understand that is also important. Part of that is that a lot of these best in breed technologies actually provide training for your staff. So when you're hiring them, you can also utilize the training, reduce your costs and the time to get them, operating efficiently by just using the tools that are already there with the technology that you're using. That's one thing. Also, a lot of times they offer CPD credits. So if you have a designated professional working for you, they can actually, a lot of times they can get credits towards the credits that they need throughout that year. So that's another thing. So looking for those people that are willing to adapt to technology and to different tools and different processes that that they're going to think a little bit outside of the box would be ideal. But yeah, I guess that's kind of.
Well, that would be, again, the assessment of where you are as an accountant and what your staff is at the current moment. And yes, a self-assessment and an assessment of staff in light of best in breed technology and moving forward. But what happens when you need someone new? Again, I make the point of the compensation is definitely important. You don't want to go too low because you're going to have an immediate retention issue. If you go too high, then you're not going to have a progression. But what would be, in your recommendation, the best way of finding someone new, regardless of the position? What would be the first step for a smaller firm?
Finding someone new. So I'm not an HR expert or recruitment expert at all. So finding somebody new, the way I've done it, I've usually worked with, so I put out my own ads and stuff, but a lot of times I would work with a recruiter, and a recruiter would help me. That is one of the biggest things. A lot of times recruiters have their nose to the ground, and they're looking on LinkedIn and Indeed and all those things that you just don't have time. Being an accounting firm owner, you really don't have time to be digging through resumes and trying to find these things. So they're worth the money when you're finding somebody. Definitely worth the money.
So hiring yourself is not recommended. You use a specialist, just like you're the specialist who does the accounting.
Do you want the
HR function?
Exactly.
If you can't retain an HR expert yourself, I mean, depending on the size of your firm, you might have someone with those duties and training.
Absolutely. And there are, I know there are some, there are some organizations out there that teach people how to find the perfect accountant employee or team member for new age accountants. We should actually get them on one day. There are a couple. I don't have the names offhand because I don't want to butcher their names or something like that. But I can put it in the comments after, or better yet, if somebody's interested, let me know in the comments and I will put it in there. I'm not going to just throw names out there without somebody actually wanting it. So
it would be great. Yeah, I think in a future expansion of this subject, we should have a recruiter on for sure.
Absolutely.
So say you have a successful transaction with your recruiter. You find the person to fit a role. They're onboarded. They're in. How do you retain them? How do we, besides just talking about the money, what kind of roadmap or development track do you recommend? And again, my viewpoint is a lot of the firms with not large accounting firms, but smaller, medium firms. What kind of roadmap for progression? Say for the bookkeeping group.
So the way I like to look at it, or not the way I like to look at it, but for me in the past, what I did to attract and retain was I gave a lot of life flexibility. So in my old firm, we retained, not that many of our staff left unless we had to let them go or something for some reason, like we built efficiencies or something. So generally the way that we attracted them was not necessarily for us compensation. So it wasn't because we were always growing and looking at scaling, and I was always reinvesting huge into the company. And this is where Accountants 2.0 came. I invested so much and then decided to split it in two different companies and sold the one. And so we were always looking at, I guess, lowering our costs a little bit by offering flexibility, by offering that remote position. Like one of our bookkeepers owned a farm and would work at 5 a.m. and for a couple hours, and then go and feed the chickens and cows and stuff, and then come back and still put her 8 hours in, and just worked whenever she wanted to, as long as she got the work done and got her hours in. So that was one way, is just them and being able to enjoy, because like I used to talk to them so much and they're like, oh, I got this job offer and that job offer and this and that, but I stay because of the flexibility, because I enjoy my work. I enjoy the ability to do what I want when I want, as long as, and nobody's hounding me. There's checks and balances, but nobody's hounding me, right? So that was important. Now, it's not that I did everything right, because I'm sure I didn't, and there's a lot of well, I know I didn't do everything right, and you won't either. So but we learned, yeah. Well, not you. I mean our whoever's viewing, right? So all I can do is share my experience, what I found to work, and some things that didn't work.
Well, what I'm catching though is the hybrid situation. I mean, it's a reality ever since the COVID pandemic, which came more to the forefront. But you were doing hybrid stuff before that, correct? Like it was.
Oh yeah. Well, now in the accounting industry, it's almost becoming a standard. So like now you don't have the flexibility that I just talked about, right? So you have to actually have a decent compensation and the hybrid and remote model. Sadly, it drives your costs up, but you're going to get good people that value that. So like in your post, you were talking about making sure like you're competitive in the amount that you're compensating.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, not just being competitive, leaving room that they can move up, they can get raises or move into other positions. That's important to be able to do that. I don't have a formula for that, but you just need to know that you need to kind of you need to pay attention to those things. If you give them everything all at once, there's going to be nothing to really keep them, or like, it's not that you want to like kind of dangle a carrot in front of people, but they have to know that there's an upward movement, right? And if you give it to them all at once, first of all, you're wasting your money because you don't have to, and then they don't expect you to, because they expect to be able to move up. And the other thing is that you're not being very sustainable in your business and keeping them, right?
Well, again, that sounds like another role for an HR consultant or professional, perhaps, to help map out the roadmaps based on what the role is that you're hiring for.
Well, I used to use PayScale. Is what I used to use. PayScale was good to kind of look at compensation.
Mm-hmm.
So that was always good, and trying to look at your firm and look at what you're offering. If you are you a boutique firm, are you a mom and pop shop, or are you a larger firm? Obviously, your compensation has to match that. What are your billings like? Because
Well,
you
I was
don't want
talking.
to. Yeah,
Sorry, I was
sorry.
talking more about the development track for training and qualification. If you have an HR specialist help you make that
Oh
roadmap,
yes, yeah.
you can overlay that. Again, it's not and the compensation using other services like PayScale and stuff for sure to get the right number, but a lot can be said for a development track, which can help offset and delay the need for raises because there's milestones that you can equate to it.
Absolutely, yeah. No, that's great. And again, not an HR person, so you would actually probably know that more than me.
Back in the
Um,
day, I've managed quite a
yeah,
few folks. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, absolutely. That's that's something that you can probably add a little bit more value to than me. I again, yeah, like you said, use an HR person, not because they also like you don't have to hire one in. You can outsource
No, there you can
the
retain them
service.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
and there's
that'd be
there's a lot of consultants out there. As a matter of fact, uh, just like our the recruiters, we could bring in. I know at least two or three experts, both in the U.S. and Canada, that do HR planning and consulting for like job descriptions and policy. It's just good to have that because you're going to need it if there's a conflict, and it's better to have that documented. But there is a step before that, and there's great services out there that you may not need to hire. You might have to. You can also contract companies for specific stuff for offshore. And I
hmm.
do mention offshoring as an alternative because if you have a very definable role that you don't know if it's going to be permanent or it's part of an ongoing, dynamic business process. Ted, so what would be some of those instances where offshore help could be, and not just for bookkeeping specifically, or any other role that you can think of
Just in
that could be
general,
used.
yeah. So let's talk about my old firm. So in my old firm, we were looking at accounts 2.0 actually being a different model. We were looking at it being like a next pilot or like a pilot or a bench or something like that, right? Bench accounting pilot. And so we were going towards that, and we actually failed that in a way, right? Like, so you're going to get honesty from me every time, everybody, just so you know. So we actually didn't launch that well. And a lot of it was the internal stuff. I was hiring, because we were launching, we were trying to reduce our costs. So I was hiring less skilled people, bringing them on. And I didn't have proper, HR things in place in order to get them trained properly, onboarded. And, bless her soul, the one I had working on it, she was trying really hard in it, but we just weren't able to get it there. And we didn't have the right management in place. So with that, we actually ran really high costs in our labor as we were trying to bring on this new work for this new concept that we were doing, and because of the management aspect of it and operations. So, sorry, bring me back to where I was going.
Well, my original
Oh, the
question.
offshoring. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
When does
Okay,
offshoring fit?
the
Yes.
reason why that's important, the reason with that whole story I just did, the reason why that's important is after the fact, when we decided we're going to start to rein in everything, we're like, wow, we're burning a lot of money. Let's rein it in. So we actually, because I was dead set on everything's going to be onshore. We're going to be that firm, offshoring and outsourcing is it's not new, but it's more of a fad when it comes to smaller companies and boutique accounting firms, things like that. So it's growing a lot. And I didn't want to be that. I was like, I want to employ my neighbor. I want to, help them out and stuff. And as we all know, in the industry, it's hard to find good people now. In North America, you can find really good people in places like the Philippines or in India or We actually offshored in Pakistan. When we started offshore, we offshored some people for some of our clientele, and it was like night and day. The company, right? It reduced our costs like crazy. The people that we did have in house were able to actually manage we're actually able to manage client relationships a lot better, and everybody was happier. Like the staff was happier that were internal. The ones that we ended up having to, or the ones that we kept, they were a lot happier. The people that were offshoring were happy.
Well, they
And
bring
the
years of
clients were
experience to the
happier.
table too, correct? Like, I mean,
Absolutely. So, I mean, you can get for a lower cost. I mean, it's not always about the cost, but like the expertise that you get at the cost, right? So I was paying people at a lower rate here, right out of school and stuff, and they had to be taught everything, where I could offshore, and like I said at the time, we were offshoring to Pakistan, and they knew stuff. They got us out of binds and fixed a lot of issues for us, right? Even right now, like part of our process is that we're offshoring because we know the benefit of it already. And some of them are actually producers on this call right now. So this is their first call. So hello, folks. But yeah, so I'm a firm believer in it, but it depends on your business model as to whether or not you want that. If you, like, some people will go right to the colleges, find them, and they have a really good system in place to train them, and that's great. Then do that if you can. But a lot of times that's not the case, as we all know. The industry is suffering. There's not as many people going into the accounting industry as there used to be, or graduating, and they all have, the ones who are graduating have pretty high expectations, like remote work. A lot of them think they're going to make like $80,000 out of the gate, and maybe some of them will, but it's really, that's kind of a ridiculous assumption for them to make, and a lot of times it's unrealistic. So in order to, I guess, help yourself grow and to be scalable, you need to think about offshoring or outsourcing.
great. Well, so Ted, the takeaways for this are: assess your current staff and yourself. Use HR professionals not only to help you acquire new staff, but to create roadmaps. And offshoring is a great option for specific job functions. So whether you're testing something and or you're getting ready for expansion of personnel, but you need the business processes in place to be working. So I think that's some pretty good advice for new age accountants.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I think so too. So I want to talk about another thing. So we are talking about like labor, and so it's like kind of jumping into capacity. And
Mm-hmm.
so another thing is automation. Creating automation in the work that they're doing is really important. So like finding maybe something like bot keeper to do some of the work ahead of time, and you can jump in and finalize it. Then that's outsourcing, but it's a lot with automation and AI, and then again, like managing everything. But I guess we kind of get into that, more of that into step 4. So maybe I'll save that actually.
Yes, that's that's our next podcast. We'll be talking about processes and scaling them. So everyone, again, I'm Steve Purpich, and this is with Ted Williamson, Accountants 2.0. If you want to join our community and follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, there'll be a link on this post. And have a great day.
Yeah. So YouTube, link or like and subscribe, just so that way you keep getting updates, right? And I also want to point this out. So when on YouTube or anywhere really, comment. So let's have a discussion. Well, first of all, what do you do? What do you find as being the best practices for hiring? Like, jump in there. Like, we might as well, let's get this community rocking and rolling and help each other out. So I think, like, what if you could answer the question, who do you use for automation and outsourcing? If you if you do use them. If you're a successful new age accountant already, great. Let's help the other ones who are up and coming. Also, what hiring and training practices or resources do you use? Like I said, we used a recruiter, and we also used our local federation organization that would actually help businesses. They actually had good resources for HR and payroll for us, and we would actually be able to use them for our clients as well. So like I said, please engage the conversation and like and subscribe.
Thanks again, Ted. And thank you, everyone, for listening again. Accounts 2.0, Steve Purbridge, Ted Williamson. Have a great one.
Have a great day.